the intro music. Yeah! Woo!
Hey everybody, welcome back to another Bad Crew video. Today going to go over some of the crews that I've seen over the past month and some of the ones that you shared most recently. I do want to say, hey, this is coming a little bit late. We usually have this at the beginning of the month, but obviously there's been a ton of stuff going on there to make that a little bit more difficult. So coming mid-season. Here, also want to just go ahead and say thank y'all for being patient as some of the videos have been delayed. Didn't have one yesterday, and that means that some of our crew videos for like how Miles O'Brien works, Kieran Reese, Cisco, probably won't come till next week. So those that don't know, lots going on for me in real life, including my son having a cardiology appointment. As you're watching this, this is set to come out at 8 in the morning on Friday. His cardiology appointment is actually like at 7. So it's a lot going on with real life with the kids. Obviously, they're extremely important. So take care of that, as well as the entire house having no AC right now. So it's just life is happening, and I appreciate y'all's patience as I work through that. But in today's video, I want to go over some crews and honestly focusing a little bit on lower level type play. I mean, let's call it mid-level play, because we're such different variations. I was actually hanging out with a streamer last night who is brand new to the game, playing on server 88, and just it was actually really fun just going in there. They didn't really know anything, they didn't know anybody, hadn't heard of like Ultimate DJ yet, hadn't heard of the community manager, and just we're learning the game on the go, and really exciting. But it also reminds me that there's so many aspects about this game that are complicated that simply most don't know. So we're going to start with some of the intermediate crews, and we'll go over both sides in this one, like we discussed the offending side, so right above our heads, and also the defending side, and what was good, what was bad. So in this one, this is a Saladin running Kang, Harrison, and Honor Guard Worf. This is a mix of critical build as well as punch really hard, really fast with Harrison, and then Kang is there. Can do a couple things. Obviously, I'm assuming people will put him there for the hull breach, which is meh. He's the most meh of the hull breach officers, really. And then also giving that bonus to accuracy, making this a great build for anti-interceptor. So if the Saladin was fighting other Saladins or maybe fighting a Gladius or something like that, good crew. And curious to see how many other people have maybe run this similar. I always want to point out, though, especially for you lower level and mid-level players, when you come to an officer like Kang, it does come down to how effective are they, as in what tier are they. Now, if this Kang was like tier 1, not really any bother. And honestly, going against the Augur here doesn't really matter, but something to remember that these Trinity officers, Kang, Jarvanik, and Marcus, really need to be about tier 4 before you can make big headway with them. But again, depends on how many stats you can stack on your ship. Now, as far as the Augur goes, big miss here. I understand the idea of running Uhura for accuracy, but the problem is, and this happens all the time with players in this game, is they see something like, ooh, it's a 40% bonus to accuracy. It's actually really bad. And that's because you have so many different things that work in this game with researches, officer abilities, and things like that. It just doesn't give you the actual, but when it says 100% bonus, 20% bonus, 40% bonus, it's not actually like, hey, this is 40% more damage versus interceptors. It's just not how it works in the game. We've gone over different math videos, so it's important to know that. So this crew over there, Kirk, is launching morale, but there's not a single officer that uses morale. Like, you could have Spock there, you could have TOS or Uhura there, but as it sits now, there's nothing, so it's kind of a bit of a waste. Bone's not really doing you too much there except in stat gain, and this is one where even though the ships are evenly matched, and yes, the Saladin has the advantage based on it being an interceptor, it still wins overwhelmingly. And when we talk about things like, you know, the strike team cards coming out and oh my gosh, they're so OP, yet proper crewing like this will give you a similar result in a similar fight. So moving on to another one here, we're going to have the Enterprise versus the Enterprise. And even though Enterprise on the left is a couple tiers higher, it didn't matter. You could have flipped this tier wise and it still would have gone the exact same way. This one running Gowron, I wanted to include this one because it includes Gowron. And you just don't see him very often on a lot of these builds because not a lot of people have leveled him up. But Gowron is interesting. Gowron was one of the officers made to be an anti-Trinity officer, as in he counters with the Kang, Jarvanik, Marcus. One of those, they each have a counter. So it's interesting to see him on there. Now you've got Marcus there and then Kirk. Now, usually you'd see a player run something like TOS Uhura, TOS Kirk Marcus, or Kirk Honor Guard Worf Marcus, but here instead going with Gowron to boost their mitigation. And then on the opposite side, though, this is kind of where it gets a little tricky / squirrely. You got Crass, Vixus, and Kirk. So kudos to the Enterprise on the right side for running Kirk, meaning that their shields in theory wouldn't go down, but as a tier 3, it is a weaker ability on that Enterprise. But then having Crass, who's supposed to negate the captain's ability of the opponent that they're fighting, just not super effective right here. And then synergizing with Vixis, who, while does give you a very, very, very small, and I mean absolutely tiny boost. And here we can pull it up on the screen, because this is an officer we don't talk about a lot, but is a lower level officer, one that you get available in the game very early. So you could be tempted to use, but heck, I haven't even maxed her. But 20% less energy damage from players. It is a PvP card, and you could see potential uses from this as a lower level player. But 20% again is not a lot, y'all. And that's just so big to point out, where you get into the even late 20s, you're talking about some of these things having several 100% bonuses. So minus 20 just isn't really moving the needle. It could move the needle if you're like a level 8 or a level 10, like your tourist is fighting a Tala, maybe does enough to move that needle just a little bit, but realistically not giving the player anything there. So have to kind of like take that one away and move on to the next one. Though we'll put this one back on the screen so you can see it straight with your eyes. But moving on to the next one, this is another one that's kind of like, hey, I understand why, maybe just because of synergy and things, but let's understand why it doesn't work. So you've got left side, good crew. You've got Gorkon, Kurla, Honor Guard, Worf. Yes, the Bortus does have kinetic weapons. In fact, it actually has a pretty good kinetic loadout when you look at its firing pattern. What's curious about this, though, is the Saladin on the other side. Now, the Saladin being maxed is known as one of the best ships in the game. Like, you get a max Saladin, we know that its big gun fires so stinking hard. People are afraid of it, and rightly so. But even then, with a bad crew, it can easily go down. Now, I do want to point out that you do have full synergy here with Kirk, but it comes down to, what does that give you? Remember the background ability. We've talked about there's a background ability to morale, to burning, and to hull breach. The background ability to morale is a very, very small piercing boost, which obviously wouldn't help here because you've obviously already got the advantage being a Saladin. You got the advantage versus a Bortus, so that doesn't help you. And then you've got Scotty, who works on battleships. Like, Scotty doesn't even work here. Like, Scotty doesn't know that he doesn't work here, but you got to know that Scotty doesn't work here. And if you're unsure of that, well, that's where we go to the officer panel. And again, I wanted to focus on some of these early officers. They tend to get forgotten. I'm sorry, I was even wrong. Ship to hull health. I was thinking there's one that did it just for straight battleship. There is one that's just for battleship hull health. But even then, 60%, like we were just talking about, is tiny, 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 tiny. Not valuable there. I mean, this is just not really doing anything for you. You would honestly be better off running the cadet crew than that crew right there. And then you go to Arcadi's secondary ability is a shield bonus. Again, this is so tiny, everybody. These bonuses are not really moving the needle for any ship, especially those in the 20s. Even though the Rev forgot that Scotty works on all ships, I could have sworn that he was just a bonus of battleships. It's just a understanding that has to come through of what actually is effective. Now, if we would have gone to the cadet crew here, you've actually would have gotten a little bit more oomph out of it, because once again, morale wasn't really doing anything for you. But let's just say that you had like Cadet Kirk. That's a 20% weapons damage boost. That's honestly, we're talking about that uncommon card there having the same level of effect as a common. I mean, it's just, we're going way back in time to, even if you are a lower level player, it comes down to these abilities amassing and what are you getting from them. So like boosting attack of officers by 50% is really nothing compared to what later cards in the game do. But if you actually run them in a set, you have value. And that's kind of what the point is with that crew that you saw with the morale. If you would have just had Spock on there, really wouldn't have complained too much. In fact, early gameplay, you know, when the Saladin was the king of the castle back in the day, we ran Bones, Spock, Kirk. Like, full morale crew on the Saladin was one of the most OP crews there was. And that still has a lot of effect today. Last one we're going to take a look at is right here. This is Augur versus Legionary, and not often you see a Legionary punch up like this. Legionary running the full strike team crew versus the Augur, which very curious crew that they're running. So you've got Kang as captain, which kind of makes sense. If they were going after interceptors or trying to flip the Trinity, I get that. But then you're running Kurla without running a full-on critical build. Kurla has no real value in the game. Kurla gives you a bonus to your kinetic damage when hitting a critical. So you actually see it with like Gorkon, Kurla, Honor Guard, Worf, on like that Bortus we saw, or on a Saladin. Well, on the Legionary, you need to be running that critical build to take advantage of that, and you're not here. And then you've just got this random officer just thrown there on the side. And as a whole, not only is there no synergy, but there's no real cohesion to what we're using here. There's no real purpose. It just kind of feels like officers that was thrown on and we weren't sure what to do. Now, bolstered this is where we found the mix up, by the way. I thought it was Scotty, it's actually Livis. But if in a battleship increases its maximum health by 50%. Now, this is a bigger boost than we were just talking about with Scotty. But again, this is a very tiny boost. And you can compare it to like the lower deck ability of, you know, a Tendy and the things that are coming out now. And this is max, by the way. I mean, this is an officer that we've taken pretty high. Now, I've taken tier 4. We can go up one more tier. But overall, what would have been better to run there if you're the augur? If you're fighting another augur, like if you know for sure this is what I'm going to fight, like I know I'm going to fight another augur, I want to be running something like Yuki, Charvanik, Giorgio, or, you know, Charvanik, Giorgio, DJ Aoki, you know, something like that to go after this. And we talk about beating this crew. I mean, one of the main things that a lot of players do to beat the strike team crew is to run Charvanik, because you know it's going to come on a battleship, and then Gorkon, and if I remember the third one there, full critical, Honor Guard Wharf. Or you can even use Khan if you don't have Honor Guard Wharf yet. So basically, to fight this new strike team, you would run a full critical build with piercing and just try to beat it as quickly as possible before strike team Una could really just level you, and strike team La'an would just build all those shots and everything, and you end up suffering long range battle. So the longer this battle goes, the more obvious the advantage the Legionary will have. The shorter the battle is, the better chance you have of beating it. So if you would have run something like that against this Legionary, you had a better shot. Obviously, this augur was trying to maybe go for interceptors, but even then, it doesn't explain Kurla because it's not a critical build. And even then, Livis, not a great card, even if he's maxed out, just such a small baby boost. And remember, your officer bonus on an augur is 300%. So you think about that. 300%, even if we add that 50% or 60% from Livis, just not a lot. We'd rather run that critical build, because a critical shot, depending on the bonus that you have on your ship, is going to do 150 to 250% or even more damage. And here's a visual representation of that, just so we can hit the manage button. Here's my augur. See my detail screen? I'm gonna do 196. So essentially, if I hit a critical, multiply my damage by 2. That's essentially what it does. Now that's a big deal. We're not talking about like a 300% with another 50 on it and making a small change based off our initial values. We're talking about actually doubling the final calculations after research, after officer bonus, and then doubling. That's what criticals do. So that's why the value is in those. Hopefully this made some sense and you liked the video. If you did, please smash the like button. It helps out the channel. Appreciate y'all as always for supporting me, my family, and supporting everything that we do. If you have questions, let me know. If you have content that you want to see, let me know. In fact, there's actually a channel in my Discord for you to recommend content you want to see on this channel, and for all the other content creators to make as well. Live long and prosper. Stay safe for the Space Cowboys. Deuces. That's me. I'm going to catch you on the next video. And Revs outie. See you later.
An even better outro than the intro. For the Empire and glory to your house.